Just got zipped up.
The church right now looks very different from how it would have looked like in 1200. In 1200 you would only had this middle part and you would have had no windows and no pews to sit on. Back then people stood in the dark in Catholic Mass. Also they would not be able to understand anything the priest said because he would have been speaking in Latin. Luckily for them though, services lasted back then only about 30 minutes, so you didn't need to be standing for too long. The Reformation came to Norway in 1537, which then changed us from Catholic to Protestant. This of course also brought changes to the services inside the church and the church itself. Services were no longer 30 minutes and no longer in Latin. They were now in Norwegian or Danish, and they were now 3 to 4 hours. With the longer services then came the pews. But as you feel as you're sitting down, you have to sit quite straight up, and you're not probably as comfortable as you would wish to be. This is to prevent people from falling asleep. Yet if you were to nod off, there would be a man walking around these corridors watching everyone, and he had a very long stick, and if he saw anyone fall asleep, he'd quickly poke them to prevent them from actually nodding off. In Catholic time, the priest would have just been standing here at the altar, and he would have a few candles, and there's actually light some holes up in the wall to bring some light into the choir, and he would read from there. But in Protestant church, we got the preacher's stool. That is where the priest would stand and preach for 3 to 4 hours. Now of course this became too long, so there was a compromise made that he would only be allowed to spend an hour and a half as soon as he walked up there. That didn't mean that the service only lasted an hour and a half, because he would also be standing here preaching, but when he stood here he preached the word of the king, which is represented by the monogram of the king above him. That's because after the Reformation, You no longer had the Pope as the head of the church, now the king was head of the church in Norway. And back then it was the Danish king, because we were part of Denmark.
The story about this church began with King Olav Haraldsson, who brought the Christianity to Norway in 1030. And in his footsteps followed over 1,000 stave churches in Norway. Today we have only 29 left. This church was built about 1158, and the name stave, the definition of a stave church must have 4 strong corner posts, and they are carrying the whole construction.
Be our hostess. Hello.
See what she wants. Ja, jeg ser hva du vil ha. Ja.
Doesn't get any better than that.
They prefer the apple and the pear trees, but they are not allowed. My name is Oslo, and I am born on this farm down by the road in the stone house, and a few years ago. And since I was the oldest one of 5 sisters, I inherited the farm, but not before I had tried some other options. I have been traveling and studied in other countries, and it took some time before I found out that the grass was greenest. And then I found my husband, or he found me, and we are not really sure. Because it was only around 30 goats when we took over, and now we have 150. And it's a fruit farm. My parents had mostly fruit and berries. So, but then it was better business in milk from goats than fruit at that time. I think now it started changing again. So what you will get today for lunch is a soup based on pearl barley and vegetables and herbs. And you can choose if you will have some meat in it. The meat is my goodness, pølse, hva det spekepølse.
Like sausage?
Sausage,
yes.
Yeah. So we cut that, and you can have it together with the soup, or you can have the soup without. And it's a starter with lepse. It's a roll with the cream cheese made at our local dairy, and some herbs and smoked salmon. The cake called kransekake. It's a special cake that we use in Norway when we have special guests, confirmations, weddings, and it's almond and egg whites and flour sugar. That's the only
And almond.
Like marzipan?
Yeah, kind of marzipan, but it's
Drier, like.
it's fried. We fry the rings and then peel the flour. It starts to rain a little, so you are welcome in here. So welcome in here. So that's Anna from Germany. It's her 3rd year here now. Hello. Hello, welcome. So please find a seat. You can sit wherever you want.
We have it in now we have 2 flavors. One is dill and another one natural. And this snowfish is made of 80% goat's milk and 20% cow's milk. Is this 2 containers? And then this are the caramels. Candies made with goat milk. And this is the brown cheese, the same food stuff. And we have the the cheese from the cow's milk, and the sausage also from there. And this is the cheese from the goat milk. So it's self-service. You can just please help yourself, and we will serve you with coffee afterwards. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have also prepared a cake made with oats.
Here are the cheeses.
Semolina, okay.
No, it's a triumph. Yeah, it's an old Sprite. Yeah.
It's our dessert. It's made with almonds and cheeses.
Some hot water and tea over here.
So we take out the curd, which in storing for this time of the year, 5-6 weeks, we have a very good white cheese. But white cheese is not the important thing. We take out the curd so we can get the whey, because the whey is the main ingredients for brown cheese. So we keep on. Now I have a very low fire, but it's important to have a good fire so we get the water out of the milk to evaporate. I pour into the pan again after taking out the curd around 10 liter whole milk, because the cream follows the white cheese, so the whey is non-fat. So around 10 liter, and from 40 liter then starting out with, and boiling for around 7-8 hours. I have around 4 kilo brown cheese in the evening, because it's so concentrated, because all this water, around almost 80%, has to evaporate. And why we get this color is that the milk sugar, lactose, caramelizes and give the brown color. So like I told the school yesterday, school children, that brown cheese actually is a caramel without sugar.
And here's a close-up.
Thank you.
Well, now we're going to go up and meet the farmer.
Stand for you, and he's the husband of Oslo, who we just met. So,
Nice having you here and welcome.
thank you.
So, and you are among the first coming to this place this summer. So, there's actually no animals here except wildlife yet. So, but if this temperature continue, and then maybe next week we will move the goats up.
It's up here.
And yeah, you probably saw some sheep on the road.
Yeah.
They are very anxious to come up here, trying to get through the gate. Every time I have been passing there, they try to cheat me. But it started out that it was 6 farmers down in the village that bought the whole property of how many? It was in 1790. So it has been in my wife's family since then, and they bought it before that until early 1700. It was actually people living here, so it was ordinary farms. It's a little bit on the limit. The climate, I mean, and far away from the fjord and the rest of the civilization. But from the Viking age and for some 100 years, it was actually 3 family farms here, and we can still see the foundations of these houses on the other side of the river owner part, so that it's more than a dozen of smaller and bigger family farms that have the possibility to bring their animals up here for grazing. And until middle of the 1960s, all these farms were in use. That means they had cows, they had goats, they had sheep, they had horses, and they brought especially the dairy cows and the dairy goats up here. They hired a young woman normally, if they didn't have a daughter on the farm in the right age, to stay here, to milk, to take care of the animals. And the typical here was a small cabin where this young milkmaid could live, and a small barn for cows and goats, and where they could take them inside and milk them. Of course, milking by hand. So until 1959 it was hand milking, but from 1960 we had a bigger barn, not as big as today, but something similar. It was actually 14 farmers that organized a little cooperative. They went across the fjord and cut big trees and went to a sawmill, and well, a lot of work. They fixed the road along the lake, because before 1960 it was no road. You had to stop by the boathouses on the other end of the lake, and from there you had to row in order to bring supplies to this little village and to bring milk, cheese, butter back to the village. Like here, I sometimes compare the menu of the goats in wintertime when I feed them with straw from fields like here and fields down in the village, where I have decided the seeds. Maybe it's 10 different species. I mean, in the grass, it's timotei, it's clover, it's whatever. And of course, that is kind of limited. When they come here, they can choose hundreds of different herbs. So at home, I give them a more or less like a McDonald's menu. Nothing bad about McDonald's, but it's a little more simple. But up here, I don't know how many stars is possible to get on the Michelin guide, but it's maximum. And I have friends, scientists, that have been grazing together with goats, so to say.
Grazing together.
And checking out what they prefer to eat. And more than 60% of what they eat during a day grazing in the mountains is not grass. It's heather, it's bark, it's leaf, it's all kinds of stuff. And of course that influences the taste of the milk and also what's in the milk. So, and it's kind of funny, the old milkmaids like my mother and Åshild's mother and so on, they knew that the milk, the grass-fed milk and the mountain milk was much more rich. But now we need scientists to find out that. And they have, for example, found out that this mountain milk has much more omega-3 and other good stuff than the milk we get from more industrial production. So that's one reason why I believe much more in small-scale production than in industrial agro-industry, where they put hundreds, thousands of cows together and feed them more or less artificially. But the original way of making it was wooden planks, several layers of birch bark without any nails, and because it was used no nails, you had to put something heavy on top of it to keep it from blowing away. So the fact that it's isolating, keeping the house warm in winter and chilly in summer is a side effect. Because until, let's say, 120 years ago, more or less the only available material for keeping the water out from a roof was birch bark. And as you see, we have millions of birch trees. So it's a fantastic material. I have been working with restoring houses and restoring roofs that has been more than 100 years. And when you take off the turf, the birch bark can look like it has been cut from the tree a few days ago. But you have to press it flat because it wants to go back to original shape.
And here's the tiny little town of Geiranger. 200 people approximately. We're getting on our first ferry of the day. Apparently we will have several ferriers today as we make our way towards Bergen.
Ska det göra?
It's called Jeg elsker deg, which means I love you in Norwegian. It is written by Hans Christian Andersen, the text. And Hans Christian Andersen is a famous author from Denmark. And this is one of the first songs which Grieg wrote. And he probably wrote it for Nina, his lovely wife. And we just practiced them, so let's give it a try.
Made a stop this morning as we're driving from Bergen to Loftus today and to see the waterfall of the Valley of the Stones. We can walk behind the waterfall and look through the waterfall. So, Hardanger Fjord. Hardanger Fjord. Where they're supposed to have their own microclimate. The weather is nice. And the sun came out for a minute, but now it's gone again. But no rain. So here's the salmon fish farm, raising Norwegian salmon that we're going to visit.
Welcome to Hardanger Aquacenter and this fish farm. This fish farm has about 50,000 salmon, and right now the fish it has been here for about 2 months, so the fish is about 250 grams right now, so they are very small. And they are staying here for about 1 year until they are 5 to 6 kilos. So the life of the salmon is 3 years because it's on land before it comes here. It's about 25,000 salmon. So we have 2 of these cages here. The company that owns this fish farm, which is called Lingalax, which is the company who owns 10 fish farms in the west of Norway, has not used antibiotics for 23 years.
Now we're on our way up to the fruit farm to find out about growing fruits. So this is the brother who runs the whole farm.
Yes. In this building we had sheep and cows until 1960. So that was, then it was a traditional West Norwegian farm with dairy farming and fruit farming. And my grandfather was also a fisherman. He was a lot of salmon in the fjords here 50 years ago. But now it's not so much. It depends on how much the fish farm is losing. Like 2 years ago, then they lost 40,000 salmons. because a boat hit the net and destroyed the net, propel, and 40,000 salmons get their summer holiday in Hardangerfjord. And almost all of them were swimming into this small little fjord here. So it was almost like Klondike here last year, because you could see salmons all the time. And what was very good for us was when we catch one and we show this fish to the fish farm, then we get the 200 crowns for each salmon. We get 200 crowns and we get back the salmon. So that was good business. Many people was fishing all summer last year, and they earned so much money. And they fished up about 20,000 of the salmons again. They are afraid that they go swim up in the rivers and get mixed with the wild salmon. That's why they do it this way. Yeah, this year looks quite good. It's the first year for I think 3 years that we have had quite much cherries. And the cherries, that's one of the favorites, most popular berries that we can sell down here. So we start with the strawberries next week, and then 1 week later we start with the cherry season. And in Norway, the season for cherries is very late, so we are the last country that are producing cherries in the end of the season. Everywhere else in the world they have finished the cherry season, so that's why it's the only berry that we are exporting. But on this farm we sell everything only from this small outlet. And I also have to, almost every year I have to go by boat over to the other side of the fjord to get more cherries. Because you never get enough. So, and it's very popular now with the Gravenstein. And what is a little bit funny was that about 10 years ago, then the wholesalers told us that now we don't want your Gravenstein anymore because it's not so popular and we want other varieties of apples now. So you have to cut them down at once. And many farmers did this, and we were one of the few that didn't cut down all this old Gravenstein. And 2 or 3 years later, then the wholesalers was begging, we need your Gravenstein again. That's quite typical, I think. And it's very popular for many farmers in this area now is making their own apple cider and apple juice. And Gravenstein is the favorite variety for this production. And last year, 2 years ago, then we made 70 new trees out of this, directly from these branches. And we, with grafting, 70 new trees. So it will be exciting to see if we get the same quality on new trees. Because the rootstock on these old trees is totally different than the rootstock that we buy nowadays. They will never be bigger than this size.
So our friends with the farm have a very nice view here of the fjord. There's another roundabout. There we are, all huddled up as it's starting to rain. All we need, waiting for our train. So now we are changing trains, going from the old-time train supposedly to the newer, more modern train.